What a day to be an NBA fan, man. It's not even 3 o'clock. I just got home from the Numbers on the Board podcast, and already a whirlwind of things have happened. The first thing we need to start with is Adrian Griffin being fired from the Milwaukee Bucks. Something that just happened real recently in real time while we were doing the podcast. And boy, did it catch a lot of us by surprise. And I think the reason it caught us by surprise is the timing, right? It is still early in the season. This is not normal. Usually a first time head coach gets like a full season, and then we can get a full opinion or evaluation of him. And we're halfway through the season. We haven't even really technically gotten past the trade deadline or even to All-Star break, and the Bucks felt the need to make a massive move like this. I personally am a fan of it, because for me, what it does is it sets a bar of what the Bucks are trying to accomplish. The Bucks are aware. They have an understanding of exactly what they're trying to do here. When the season first started, I asked my co-hosts on our podcast, was this a championship or bust season for the Bucks? They came in with the approach and mindset of not really a championship or bust, because you want to give this time, a season for Dame and Giannis to kind of gel and get some chemistry going and things like that. But I felt like when you make a move as significant and you bring in two guys and two talents, one that's an interior force, another that's a perimeter force, and you bring them together to a team that had already have championship aspirations, and you really just swapped out Drew and you implemented Dame, because you still have Middleton, you still have Lopez, you still have Giannis, you still have Bobby Portis. You know what I mean? You still have Connaughton. There are some things that are a little different, but for the most part, that championship core is still intact. And you're swapping out Drew and his defense for elite offense and Damian Lillard, and somebody who should, as far as being in a tandem with Giannis, should be unstoppable. A Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo offensive tandem should not be limited in any world, especially knowing, again, the force that Giannis brings on the interior and then the precision that Dame brings on a perimeter. This seemed like a match made in heaven. Now, 43 games into the season, though the Bucks are second in the Eastern Conference, anybody who knows anything about basketball, anybody who has watched the Milwaukee Bucks, has seen that for what they're trying to accomplish and what they want to do, something just ain't there. And for a large part, it's been the defensive side of the basketball. And that is a place where the Bucks over the last few years have really created a concrete identity, and that's how they hung their hat and won. They stopped and limited teams from having offensive explosions, and then they score when they need to. They had certain guys down the stretches like Giannis, Chris Middleton, and then you have Brook Lopez, who can make timely shots and impact the offensive side of the basketball by stretching the floor. And then Drew Holiday had certain nights and certain games where he got things going, and that was just a recipe. We're going to lock up. We're going to wear our hard hats on the defensive side of the basketball. We're going to rebound the basketball. We got Brook Lopez dropping and protecting the rim and blocking anything that comes there. We got Giannis as a weak side help defender who can rotate and roam around the court to kind of fill up any gaps and holes. We have Chris Middleton, who's going to just keep his man in check as much as possible. And then we have the best perimeter defender in Drew Holiday. And this year, that identity left completely. This became a more offensive-minded team, obviously, because you swap out an offensive-minded guard of Damian Lillard with Drew Holiday, or vice versa. You swap out Drew Holiday with an offensive-minded guard and Damian Lillard, and that has dropped tremendously. I think the last time I checked, the Bucks are around 22nd defensively. This is a team that had a top 5 defense last year. This is a team that has allowed, in back-to-back matchups with the Pistons, 141 one night, 120-something the next night. I've seen the Spurs really give them a go. I've seen the Cavaliers run them off the court as good and on the fire as the Cavaliers been. I just don't view them as a team that should have ever beaten the Milwaukee Bucks as bad as they did. And for me and other basketball minds around the association, whether it's fans, media, analysts, that's what I think a lot of us have seen. The inconsistencies on defense, and knowing that that's going to have to be something that's there. As good as they are offensively, and as good as Dame and Giannis can be in a tandem, in order for them to get to where they're trying to get to, the consistency and the effort on the defensive side of the basketball is not there. And it's not going to work with this level of effort. There's a lack of communication and transition, which is why they give up so many transition threes. They don't match up well. I mean, your backcourt is Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley. You don't really have that much wiggle room to go out and make major moves to enhance the defensive side of the basketball. And my question for the Bucks is, what if this turns out to be a personnel thing? What do you do then? I have no problem swapping out Adrian Griffin for a veteran head coach who's managed teams like this before. Obviously, Doc Rivers, hasn't had a losing season. I don't know how long. You know what I'm saying? It's been a very long time, since probably the Magic. You know what I mean? Like, Doc Rivers gets the job done in a regular season, but he's questionable when it comes to postseason. Because we are in the middle of the NBA season, there's not that many candidates. So this is probably going to be Doc Rivers. By the time I finish this video, Doc Rivers might be announced as the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Right now, it's Joe Prunty stepping up as the interim head coach, but very fast, it may become Doc Rivers before we know it. And the coaching will change. Maybe it's a different voice. Maybe it's a different respect. I don't know. But the personnel is going to stay the same. Doc Rivers isn't bringing anybody from the 2008 Boston Celtics in to defend. There's no Tony Allen, young Tony Allen ain't coming through that door. You're still going to have Malik Beasley and Damian Lillard as the backcourt of this team. And we know, as good as Damian Lillard is, as much as Malik Beasley can shoot the ball and be a floor spacer and a catch and shoot threat, those are our big two weaknesses on the defensive side of the basketball, without a doubt. And that's the interesting part for me. Again, I like it because, to me, if I was a Bucks fan and it said, okay, we have a certain level of expectation that we're looking at. You know what I mean? Like, there's a level that we know we have to get to. This is not just making the playoffs. This is not just getting to the second round. Like, we're in this to do damage. We invested in Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo to win championships, to hang banners. This is not to be in the conversation. This is not to get a second-round exit to a Boston Celtics team. This is not to get knocked out of the playoffs by the Miami Heat again. This is not to fall short. This is to do what we told Giannis and promised Giannis what he was going to get by staying here, which is to have a chance to compete for championships every single year. And though they have been good and solid, when I think about the ingredients of a championship team, even past years, even the product that we got from the Bucks the year they won a championship, I haven't seen that. This is a regular season time right now where teams are going to win games because on paper, the Bucks can get away with a lot of those little detailed things. They can get away with a lot of that because night in, night out, they can lean on these two guys to really bail them out and beat teams that they're better than. The Pistons don't know how to win basketball games. So they can get by with that. I used the analogy in my Heliocentric podcast maybe a week or two ago where I compared the Bucks, the current Bucks, or the Bucks that had Adrian Griffin as their coach, because I don't know what the next phase of the Bucks will look like. But they reminded me of like that good high school basketball player that gets to the next level and is not the player that we known them to be from high school. And you realize years later, like, oh, that guy was getting by pure talent. He wasn't doing the extra things to have skill or to work on his game and get to the next level. So because he was 6'8" in high school, he was a hoop mixtape, ball is life, overtime. He was all on all of the platforms dunking on everybody because he was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster. But as soon as he goes to a high-level Division I college where everybody else is fast, everybody else is strong, everybody else is 6'8", it kind of balanced out. He wasn't as dominant, right? And it was like, oh, maybe that's a shaky year. Then he goes to the NBA, and he really gets exposed because everybody there is faster and stronger, and they're 6'8", and they're also working on their game. And you look at the certain players, and we've seen it time and time, almost every year it happens, where there's somebody who was a dog in high school, and they get to college, and they don't look as dominant, but it's like you still can see the potential. And then they get to the NBA, and you don't really see the potential anymore because they can't get by just their athleticism or by just their talent. You know what I mean? When you get to these higher levels, it takes more than talent. And I look at the Bucks like that. In the regular season, y'all can get away by just having Damian Lillard hit miracle shots to win against, I forget who he hit the shot against. I can't even remember. The game winner Damian Lillard had like a week or two ago. You can get by with that. And I'm not saying Damian Lillard can't hit or won't hit game winners in the playoffs. We've seen it. But there's just a feel. There's just something that's different with the top tier teams. It's the NBA. On any given night, anybody can be beaten. On any given night, any player can drop 30. They're all professionals. They all have been the man before. Anybody can lose to anybody. But on a night-by-night basis, even when they win, the Bucks show major flaws that you really don't see from real championship teams. The Celtics don't really play with their food. Again, the Celtics will have some bad losses this year like every other contender. But on a consistent basis, they handle their business. They handle their business, and their flaws are a lot more minuscule than a team like the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's the difference maker. And when you come to that conclusion, I understand firing the coach. I understand looking for a veteran coach that has experience, not only experience, but has experience with this type of team that's in this level. Doc Rivers, there's a bunch of flaws on his resume. There's a bunch of things we can bring up. There's a bunch of things people are going to bring up. He doesn't have the greatest track record in the playoffs for a coach who has coached teams with as much talent as he has. Because in theory, Doc Rivers should have a couple of more championships, if we're being honest. He's had some unfortunate, he may be the most unluckiest coach also, even going back to the Orlando days, where Grant Hill and T-Mac was supposed to come in and beat his tandem, but Grant Hill just couldn't get healthy with that ankle injury, where they almost had Tim Duncan, but the Orlando Magic didn't want to send a private plane or didn't want to let somebody from his family use a private plane or something like that, and that made him just say, F it, I'll just stay with the Spurs. Super unlucky. Because the T-Mac, healthy Grant Hill, and the Tim Duncan probably winning the championship in 2003. Then you win it with Boston. Then you go to the Clippers. Hey, a lot of things happen with the Clippers. The Blake Griffin-Chris Paul duo could never stay healthy. Could Doc Rivers have made some better coaching choices and decisions when times they were healthy? For sure. But it's a split thing. I don't think you just correlate that all to Doc Rivers. I don't think that goes all on Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. That's just as a tandem with a bunch of other things that J.J. Redick and other voices have talked about. The chemistry, the trust within the locker room, not liking each other. So some of that added shit is in it as well. And then you go to Philly, where Ben Simmons, all-NBA Ben Simmons, perennial all-star Ben Simmons, perennial all-star Joel Embiid. And you get there, and it looks like it's that year for the Sixers. And then something just happens to Ben Simmons that we still have no idea what caused it, what's going on. We have that just is still a mystery. Which, again, is something that's very hard to put on Doc Rivers. But there were some decisions like, hey, why don't you just put Ben Simmons on Trae Young? Why is Danny Green running around getting pieced up by Trae Young in game one when you could just make the adjustment? Something that people have held you accountable for as many years as you've been coaching, adjustments. But again, I found myself going back to the same point. I get it. I like it. I understand it. But I do have a few questions. And one of the biggest questions that I'm going to have is the personnel. What happens if you kind of are getting the same results because on a personnel level, you have what you have? As good of a coach as Doc Rivers is he really going to make Damian Lillard an average or above average defender? Can he pull something out of a hat that's going to make a backcourt of Malik Beasley and Dame average to above average defenders? That's yet to be seen. We don't know the details. Obviously, some trust has been lost from Giannis and a lot of the other players on the roster, but I don't know the details as if did Giannis storm into the front office doors and say, hey, enough is enough? Did front office feel uneasy and make a phone call like, hey, Giannis, we feeling like this. What do you think? And then Giannis solidified it by, yeah, I think it will be good if we replace him. Was it Dame and Giannis? I would love to know. But this has been a wild ride for Adrian Griffin in his first year of being a head coach. The Terry Stotts stuff, the Damian Lillard saying, hey, I need to do this, telling him how to sub him or how to create his rotations, to now being fired with 43 games into your career with a team that I think anybody would be lucky to coach. And that's the part I also think of it. Like, this has to be one of the most embarrassing firings in a very long time. It's similar to the David Blatt thing. Only thing is, LeBron has this thing with coaches. And I don't know if that was David Blatt's first year. I can't remember if David Blatt. Yeah, I think that was David Blatt's second year. This is your first year with Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I understand the pressures. I understand how hard it is. People think it's just an easy job. You just get these talented players and you just roll the ball out there and you say, hey, go win games. It is definitely not that simple, especially as a first-time head coach. But to be in that position I'm very curious. Like, is Adrian Griffin ever going to coach again? How could he ever come back and coach a team? Who's going to hire him with this on his resume? That's where my mind goes. So that's a story to watch. I got it up in front of me. I'm checking my phone as it's going on just to see if they're making the decision on Doc Rivers being the head coach. We still haven't had a decision yet. In other news, the Miami Heat this morning when I woke up, as soon as I woke up and opened my eyes, they had completed a trade to land Terry Rozier for Kyle Lowry and a 2027 first-round pick that is lottery protected, which probably will convert to the Hornets because the Miami Heat very rarely miss the playoffs. I think this is a monstrous move for the Miami Heat, a team that continues to get better, a team that is going to continue to be a threat in the Eastern Conference. And the one thing that they lacked, offense and consistent shooting and more shot creation, they just got with Terry Rozier. And the best thing I like about it is you can bring him off the bench and have a nice bench scorer who can go get 20 points or more on any given night. You know what I mean? And they now have a little bit of added depth, which has always been a question for the Miami Heat. You're thinking about Hero, Jaquez, Jimmy, Bam, Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, Terry Rozier, Nikola Jovic, Kevin Love. They now have a solid 9-10 guys, Hayward Highsmith, that they feel they can trust to go out there and play playoff minutes. So would love to see if they can make another move. Not nothing big, not even a trade, but maybe in a buyout market, go get some size. I would love to see the Miami Heat go and try to bolster that front court some more behind Bam Adebayo. But I love this move for them. I was a guy as a Knicks fan that was hoping that the Knicks could maybe potentially make a move for Terry Rozier. I think anybody that's in the playoff hunt could go out and add a guy like Terry Rozier that can give you some scoring punch on any given night. He can come in and replace a starter. He can be a starter. He can be a six-man. When Terry Rozier gets going and gets hot, he's one of those guys that can fill it up very, very quickly and change the dynamic of a game. And I think with the Miami Heat, he's going to have a moment or two where he changes the direction of a game for them. And I think this is one of those underrated pickups that maybe down the line when it comes playoff time, we look back and say, whoa, where would they be without that move? And the fact that you give up Kyle Lowry, who, wasn't playing his best basketball with the Miami Heat, you're able to use that contract to get something more pivotal. Terry Rozier does have 3 years remaining on his contract. That's a first-round pick that I don't think the Miami Heat are going to miss. And I love the direction for the Hornets. This is what you have to do with those type of assets. Maybe they do the same thing with P.J. Washington. Apparently, they're not going to buy out Kyle Lowry immediately. They're going to try to see if they can flip him. How are they going to do that? I don't know. I don't know too many teams that are lining up at the door to trade and acquire a $30 million contract of Kyle Lowry with the lack of production that he just recently gave the Miami Heat. So that's going to be something to watch out for. But they still do have Gordon Hayward. If anybody's going to be a buyer on him, I don't know. You have P.J. Washington. But I do think that it's time to kind of restructure their rebuild. I think LaMelo Ball is definitely the face of that. I think Brandon Miller has had an incredible rookie year that I don't think a lot of people talk about enough for my liking, because so many people were loud and had so much to say when the Hornets made the selection, as if Scoot Henderson was the next coming of Derrick Rose or like. And don't get me wrong, Scoot Henderson has a lot of talent. His rookie year hasn't gone the way he would like. But if you're patient, like we should be with most rookies, I think there's a way for him to get back on track. And he's slowly getting more comfortable. And we just have to give him time. But at the same token, I never understood the reaction to Brandon Miller being taken above Scoot Henderson. as if we just had this surefire thing, this guy that was just, you know what I mean? We had Wemby. I understood it for a Wemby thing, but Scoot was never like Wemby to me. He was never the guy where it was like, you have to get him. You cannot pass up on. I never understood that. I never thought that Scoot was way out of here and Brandon Miller was just way over here. I never understood that analogy. And now, though it's just the first year, who knows what's going to happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years, the conversation and the chatter around that, or the reaction to Brandon Miller having the year he's having, it's quiet. It's quiet. The guy last 3 games is averaging 25 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 61% from the field, 43% from the three-point line, and 92% from the free throw line. He had a major big shot against the Timberwolves last night. And that's just my sentiment. I think the Charlotte Hornets are doing the right thing. You build around LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. You shelf this year. Hopefully get you another top 5 pick to add to the core. And in a draft like this, where there's a lot of different complementary pieces, I think you just continue to do that. Add complementary pieces. Hopefully Mark Williams can get back healthy and start to show some signs of progression and development. And you go that route. I love some of the things I'm seeing from Nick Smith little by little. He hit a big-time corner 3 from the left side against the Timberwolves last night as well. And I think that's the direction you go in. You have to try to get as much as you can for the Terry Roziers. I think you missed out on the Gordon Hayward market back when he had one a year or 2 ago, just because right now he's on the last year of that deal and his injury history continues to pile up. Maybe you move on from PJ Washington. He has an attractive contract out there. And yeah, you turn it over to just being a young movement. And even with the coaching, Steve Clifford is an old-fashioned head coach, and I understand he does a good job when it comes to grinding out W's and getting as many as he can. But I think you may need to shake it up and get a youthful coach, somebody that's young and more relatable to what they have in there, and figure out an identity. It's time for this team to play fast and play with tempo and push the pace and use their athleticism and length and youthfulness to create turnovers and miss shots on the defensive end to speed the game up for them. So that's that. Anything else around the NBA whirlwind? We got Tristan Thompson suspended 25 games for violating the NBA's drug policy. Apparently, Tristan Thompson was using performance-enhancing drugs that promote growth hormone and muscle enhancer. It's to build lean muscle mass and bulk up body mass. So Tristan Thompson is going to be out for the next 25 games. And I don't ask me. I don't know, people. I'm just here to report and speak on it. There's no other information I have on that. And yeah, we'll see. Yes. Right here in front of me, before we wrap up this video, Doc Rivers and the Bucks are working toward a deal. Doc Rivers is the leader to become new head coach of the Bucks, and the sides are working toward a deal, league sources say. This is from Shams. So yeah, there you have it. We are officially going to announce that Doc Rivers is the new head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and they have a game tomorrow, I believe. So maybe we'll see Doc Rivers on the bench by tomorrow. This should be a fast process. Very interesting. And I will continue to be here to update y'all on everything that's going on around the NBA. A lot more rumors heating up. We got a trade this morning. That's what, the 3rd or 4th trade we've already had. We're still a week and a half to 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. Rumors are piling up on top of each other. We got coaching stuff happening. We go right around the corner from All-Star Weekend. This is the best time of the year to be an NBA fan with everything that's going on. I'll be locked in. If you need to hear any news or any updates or opinion, professional opinions, this is the place to come. Pee Wee the Plug, all basketball news on lock. As always, I appreciate y'all. I'm out. Peace.